Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this House, I rise to make my contribution on Budget 2013 under the theme Overcoming Challenges Together, Accelerating Gains for Guyana. Mr. Speaker, this budget is crafted for the rich and the not so rich. It is crafted for the PPP cronies. Certainly, sir, it is not crafted for the working class people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, in introducing Budget 2013, the Honorable Finance Minister, in his opening remarks at page 1, made reference to the one-seat majority in this new dispensation and alluded to parliamentary action of the past 14 months, which was occasioned by the one-seat majority. Sir, the honorable member cited cutting essential budgetary allocations, denying an elected member the right to speak in the National Assembly, passing of motions or bills to defy reason, among others. Mr. Speaker, having assimilated that, I wish to point out the following. The one-seat majority is a telling reality of the new dispensation the people of Guyana wanted. Sir, prior to 2011, the PPPC had a 5-seat majority, and they did whatever they wanted to do, right or wrong. But the Guyanese nation disagreed with their approach, hence this new dispensation. I wanted to advise my dear comrades that you will have to live with that for a little while more, after which we will exchange sides and fully take the reins of government. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the temerity to speak about cutting essential budgetary allocations, sir. Why would the opposition agree to have the National Comedy Network, the National Communications Network, which is classified as the mouthpiece of the PPPC, to spend taxpayers' money for the advocacy of PPP's propaganda? Why was an investigation triggered for NCN and its finances? And why did Stafford's services dispensed with? Those are questions that must be answered by the Honorable Minister of Finance. How do you answer for contract holders who are not on the job and who are receiving huge sums of money as their salaries from the office of the President? And those are only a few to mention. Thirdly, a very sensitive issue, which the Honorable Finance Minister referred to, the denying of the right of an elected member to speak in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, we in the opposition do not deal with petty politics. We deal with issues. And you must understand the issue. We move the motion remember, we believe that under his watch, crime escalated, murders increased rapidly, and public security under his watch was dismal. And so we felt that if at minimum our country is depleted further of its essential human resources, it is time for us to save it. And if the PPP does not feel that we should save it, then they are playing petty politics. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn my attention to the education sector. Mr. Speaker, I am totally disappointed. I listened to the Honorable Minister of Education and expected her to adumbrate education policies intended for 2013. But no, this House was treated to the story of Dream Boy. Mr. Speaker, I cannot help but to say that our education system in Guyana sucks. Its focus is on the wrong ball. The government's thinking on education is that the more money you put into the system, it is the most improved one. We hear from the finance minister about the largest budget. We see an increase by over $2 billion in the education sector. But we are not getting value for money. And sir, I will venture to cite some examples to substantiate my statement. One, according to the budget, some $3 billion is budgeted to be spent on infrastructure and repairs, etc. But sir, a big chunk of this money is to construct new schools, among other things. I believe and I recommend that the focus should be on the following. A, repairing and maintaining more of the existing schools so that more of our children can benefit and be safe. Mr. Speaker, how could we have schools that have, for example, industrialized center and no electricity to make it functional where children will get real benefit? B, how could we have schools where adequate textbooks and furniture are absent? Mr. Speaker, I have just returned from Region 9, and let me point out that there are 4 children sitting in one bench at the St. Ignatius Primary School. And this is across all the regions. I hope Ms. Kylie Rodriguez is very proud of that achievement. 4 children in one bench. See, how do we have new schools when the existing one does not have furniture to accommodate all our children? Education, sir, is not about tinkering with people's minds or with politicking. We must get it right. And I urge the Honorable Minister of Education to get it right and focus in the direction where our nation's children will benefit. Teacher training. Mr. Speaker, I cannot help but allude to teacher training. At our teacher training institutions, here again, the government's focus is dilated. And I have been making this point over and over again. But someone is either not listening or not hearing. Mr. Speaker, government's focus is on quantity, not quality. It must not be a matter of how many, but how good they may be. This government gloats by going to public fora, including these hallowed halls, and speak of large numbers graduating. But sir, if our teachers are poorly trained, then our children in turn will suffer. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister whether the professionals have done an assessment or analysis of the content of teacher training at regional centers as compared with that of the Cyril Butler College of Education. I would like to bring it to your attention. The teacher trainees at the regional centers are robbed of time for lecture series, exposure, opportunities, and generally the content. These factors, sir, contribute to the poor quality of teacher training across regional centers. I call on the government to address the core of the problem: education delivery. Mr. Speaker, I believe in giving credit where credit is due. And I believe that we have seen improvement at the National Center for Education and Research Development, NCERD. And it is good when the minister can take on board recommendations made in this honorable House and implement them. I note with great appreciation the improvement of the learning channel, which I raised on the last occasion, and its programs, and the exam operations at the examination section of NCERD. Towards this end, I would like to offer congratulations to Minister Priyamanichan for allocating a portion of professionalism to her dicta. Thanks for accepting APNU's recommendation. But I want to alert you that your literacy, in case you don't know, your literacy educators have not been paid through the NCERD program from January until this month of April. And something should be done about that very quickly. Speaker, more germane to the delivery of education would be what we do to improve our education system. And here I would like to allude to the following. 1, recognizing the fact that pass rate in English and math of a meager 31%. Government made an intervention and injected $80 million and invested it in photocopied textbooks, geometry sets, etc. And what happened? The pass rate was reduced to 29%. That must have told us that the intervention was not the answer. But what is? Mr. Speaker, there is a shortage of competent lecturers at our training facilities, and we have to solve that problem. And we can solve that problem by improved training and significant increase in their emoluments. Lecturers cannot give of their best because they are not properly remunerated. They will not spend quality time to deliver. They have to concentrate on sub-jobs to make $1 to be able to cope in Guyana, where the cost of living is extremely high. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, injections cannot be given at the secondary level. It has to be at the primary level. And if you do not have, for example, a proper foundation, when building a house, the entire house will collapse. And so if we can't fix the bottom, then the top will collapse. Mr. Speaker, there are several methods of teaching reading, for example. One, are our schools implementing them? Are there any considered incentives for improved performance? What additional inputs are given to schools and teachers to address our literacy and numeracy? I urge the government to use some pilot schools in every region to start as a base with new methodologies. Sir, these are the nitty-gritties that we have to look at if we want to improve literacy and numeracy. In our education system, sir, how about if we try a salary injection for our teachers and see whether it will improve our children's performance? I know you will want to argue about the union's multi-year agreement, but Mr. Speaker, it is worth the try. I call on the government, sir, to give the teachers the salary increase injection and improved working conditions, and I am positive that there will be improved performance. Preparation for industries and the world of work. Mr. Speaker, government has been touting about developmental projects, and to name just two, they spoke of Marriott Hotel and the expansion of the Jagan International Airport. Sir, I have to point out that it would appear that our education system is not geared to prepare anyone to work on those developmental projects. One, what then are the roles of schools with industrial arts center? Two, are the technical institutes preparing anyone for the world of work? Three, is it that Guyanese have to go to China, India, Brazil, or some foreign country to learn masonry and carpentry, or how to fetch a bucket of bricks? We hear of the thousands being trained, according to Ministers Gopal and Wanejil, honorable members. But where are they? And why do we have to resort to importation of human resources to do those jobs at those very developmental projects? Mr. Speaker, is it that our education system is only concerned with academic, exam-oriented people? Is it that the government is losing the opportunity of preparing students to have rounded personalities? Mr. Speaker, indeed the government has lost that golden opportunity to develop our nation's children, to become good men and women of tomorrow, and who can develop Guyana. I urge you, Honorable Minister, to rethink your strategy. The writing is on the wall. Let us not create the scenario of exam-oriented students only, but let us build around making our children functional in today's society. Let us work towards making our children with rounded personalities. Schools in the regions. Mr. Speaker, if we take a look at the schools in the region, we will see how they are overwhelmed with problems. Dropouts, vandalism, crime, drug abuse, children wanting to be teachers, only to mention a few. Mr. Speaker, these atrocities are growing daily. But is there a plan by the ministry to grapple with these problems? The budget is silent. I recall in my younger days as an educator, the PNC introduced guidance and counseling as a compulsory subject. But true to form, this government believes that they must undo everything that was implemented by the PNC government. But sir, there is so much to learn from guidance and counseling. I believe it will help to mold our nation's children. Mr. Speaker, for years, we have also been talking about dropouts at the school system. But we do not want to solve those kinds of problems. Sir, I asked the government a few questions. What has happened to the idea of welfare officers or social workers, and I mean adequate welfare officers and social workers? What has happened to security in all the schools? Is there any consideration for risk allowances for our teachers? Finally, on this topic, Mr. Speaker, let us look at the schools across the regions carefully, and we will see children from level 1 to CSEC go to lessons. The majority of children writing CXC going to some lessons or the other. Whether they are the great schools like Queen's College, St. Stanislaus, and Bishop, they are no exception, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, does it not bother you? Why is this happening now in the education system? These are some of the things we must seek to find out why and seek to grapple with them. Tech work. Mr. Speaker, tech work has always been close to my heart, and I will keep it there. The world over, it is widely accepted that our children have varying abilities. Not everyone can be gifted academics, but we must recognize the importance of making provisions for those who are academically challenged. Sir, I do not want to speak of Leonora or my Polytechnical centers, but I ask the question, what has happened to our technical institutes? What input, if at all, necessary for their viability? And what is the output, among other things? Mr. Speaker, this government is not serious because they are allowing these institutes and other tech work facilities to fail. I referred earlier to a center, for example, built, and I'll call the name, it is the Stuartville Secondary School, with no electricity. How could this government be serious about tech vote? I trust that the electricity will be put in soon. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the Honorable Minister not to be clouded by big money. Address your mind to real growth and development for Guyana's young people. Let us prepare those young people for employment opportunities. Finally, Mr. Speaker, for the sake of time, I wish to ask the Minister to examine the program offered by the Leonora and Marconi Tech Vox Centers. Also, the Ministry must investigate the extent of the benefits of those who attend those institutions. University of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Finance at page 34 of the budget speech indicated that the 1.7 billion is being invested in the University of Guyana, including 450 million in loan for 2030. The loan scheme, sir, is still to be operationalized as a revolving loan scheme after close to 20 years of existence. Of the 500 million that the late Dr. Chetty Jagan announced as the government input, 450 million is now the sum poured into the scheme annually with no reference to an effort at loan recovery. While the government brazenly refers to the loan as a subvention to the university, albeit this money only becomes available to universities when individual students take loans. Notably less of the university's population is opting to take the loan. Hence, some of the so-called subvention is never disbursed after the government uses that sum in its propaganda to pad the amount of money to supposedly allocated to the university. The budget for years has been devoid of any policy initiative on tertiary education. And even the US 10 million, which will go to the university under the World Bank loan, is insufficient to address the woes of the university. And this sum only became available to the university as leftovers from a project which initially did not include the university in its profile. Under capital estimates, 50 million has been allocated for distance education by the university. Although there is no project that has been developed to cater for distance education at the university, this may yet be unspent monies at the end of the 2013 fiscal year, although it will be used to enhance the sum that is termed the largest budget ever. With all the talk about the education sector and millions spent under the Henry and Batch regimes to enact modern legislation for education sector, the education bill is still to be brought to the National Assembly and may well remain where it is right now, but a touted reform or a reform which would itself require reform. Mr. Speaker, I want to refer this Honorable House to a principle outlined in the Constitution of Guyana. Sir, Article 27(1) illustrates, and I quote, every citizen has the right to free education from nursery to university, as well as at non-formal places where opportunities are provided for education and training. My understanding is that the Constitution reform has proposed a change from university to secondary. Oh, Forbes Burnham, I wish you could come back to save this nation. Education. Mr. Speaker, firstly, I call on the government to use the principle in Article 27 as a guide. Secondly, the Honorable Finance Minister alluded to a growth rate of 4.8% in his budget presentation, which illustrates that Guyana is doing well. That's true. And so, sir, I hope if that figure is reliable, then I'm sure that this government must not increase the fees for our young people to be denied of the tertiary education at the University of Guyana. There has been a lot of talk in and around about raising the fees at the University of Guyana. I call on the government, Mr. Speaker, to relinquish the idea and thought of any hike at the University of Guyana. Our young people need a chance for their upliftment. Conclusion. Mr. Speaker, APNU certainly is not optimistic with the 2013 national budget. This government's self-centered and autocratic approach to the carving of budget 2013 is unacceptable. It is not only what you want, but it is what we want together. I urge the government to desist from the fluff it has been grown accustomed to for the cameras. That is the talk of working together and consultation. But may I give you a gentle reminder, honorable members, that 33 is greater than 32. Mr. Speaker, having identified the misdirected focus of government, I would hasten to reiterate the following recommendations. 1, you need to change your strategy of only building buildings and strive to adequately equip them for genuine use. 2, start meaningful injections for improvement at the primary level, not the secondary level. 3, increase teachers' salaries for improved output. 4, enhance teacher training with improved methodologies via lecturers who must begin to enjoy improved working conditions. 5, equip technical institutes and industrial arts centers with adequate equipment. 6, reintroduce the subvention for Critchlow Labour College in order to give a second chance toward Guyanese youth. 7, establish in every a pilot project, an experiment on new methodologies in the teaching of reading. And finally, 8, consider establishing Tech VOC institution in regions 1, 7, 8, and 9. We need to prepare our young people in our interior regions and not only those on the coastline. Mr. Speaker, I do not wish to go on and on, but for starters, I urge government, and in particular the Minister of Education, to not only spend money, but to work towards getting value for that money. Hence, I commend those recommendations for action in order to improve the education sector. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member.